Your dashboard looks great, but what if I told you that you could make it smart? In this video, we are going to unlock the true potentials of Power BI using DAX. Hi, I'm Nivea and welcome back to Chapter 6 of our Power BI course powered by Star Agile. We've come a long way understanding the 5 chapters, which involves understanding our data set, covering the most essential parts of data transformation, building dashboards. If you haven't already watched these videos, I highly recommend you to give a quick watch. And today, we are going to cover the most powerful language of Power BI, which is DAX, which stands for Data Analytics Expression. We've already done some of the basic measures like sum and calculate and understand how to organize them. Today, we are going to deep dive into some of the time intelligence measure, like understanding monthly sales, month-on-month growth, quarterly growth, and yearly growth, which is very essential in gauging your performance with respect to the business perspective. So without wasting much time, let's get started. So in our last chapter, we did learn about some of the basic measures that is required in order to build our dashboard. In this particular chapter, we will be deep diving and understanding why measures are used in the first place, what is the right convention to use them, and also we'll be learning some of the most powerful measure, that is calculate. Along with that, we'll also be diving into some of the time intelligence functions, right? So let's get started. So let's dive into understanding the agenda that we have for today's program. So we are going to discuss DAX and its calculation, guys. So when it comes to DAX, there are a lot of things that you have to understand with respect to the concept, okay? So the first thing is understand what are measures, okay? Why we use them, and what is the difference between a measure and a calculated column, and why not use a calculated column instead of a measure. We are going to deep dive into calculate function, where we are going to see how to use the calculate function and what is the impact that the calculate function will basically have on various other filters that you have in place. So understanding in depth about this becomes very important, guys. Next, we are going to have scenario-based questions here. So here, I'll be giving you 2 problem statements, okay? So both of which is very much relevant to the fuel bunk example. So here, you're going to see what are the different ways that you can bring meaning to your fuel bunk by using these measures, by incorporating them. Fourthly, you will dive into understanding what are variables. So as and when you try to start building measures, right, you will try to understand why variables are important while you build huge measures, right? So we'll be looking at that. And lastly, we'll be learning some of the most important time intelligent functions, like we'll be learning about MTD, YTD, QTD, okay, which stands for month to date, year to date, quarter to date, and based on that you'll also be deriving percentage of MOM growth, which is your month on month growth, and then you have year on year growth and also quarter on quarter growth. So we'll be learning a lot of this, okay? So that brings us to one thing, that is what are measures. So before we start diving into the dashboard and seeing how to create one, let's try to understand what is a measure. Measure is nothing but a formula that is written in DAX, guys, okay? It is calculated on the fly, which means that with respect to the current filter context, whatever is there, like let's say for example, you have Bangalore and then you have diesel type that is already selected in your filters. And if you basically drag the total sales, you will get the value only for that, okay? So that is what is the measure, and you'll be seeing what is the difference between a calculated column and a measure. Calculated column is a pre-cooked food and your measure is a freshly cooked food. So what do you mean by this? Let's dive into the dashboard and see what it means. So this was the dashboard that we created in the last class. So let me just open another page, and I have 2 filters in place, right? So I have the location filter, followed by that I have the fuel type filter. Now let me just insert a card here, open the visualization pane and click on the card. Okay, so you do know that we have created some of the very basic measures, right? We've created what is like total sales, total purchase. It's all very simple. So let me just drag this total sales here and drop it. So what happens? 283 million is the amount that is being displayed here. But guys, Do you see the filter that has been applied? Right, let me show it to you once again. So let me just remove this field. Okay, let me say I have selected Chennai as a location. Okay, and I have chosen petrol as my fuel type. Okay, so see what's going to happen now. If I'm going to drag the total sales in liters and place it, the value is 3 million. It's not showing the total sales because the value of total sales is different altogether. It is how much? I think it comes around yes, so this is in rupees, and in liters it comes around 3 million altogether, right? So if you just a second. So I am going to create a card here, all right? And I am going to copy this whole thing, that is total sales in liters, and I'm going to drop it here. Do you see what is the total value? It is 399.59 million, right? That's the total sales. But let's say I am choosing Bangalore, or let me say I'm choosing Chennai in this case, right? And I am going to again create a card, and I'm going to drag and drop the value here. It is no longer 399 million, guys. It is 148 million. Reason being that I've already applied the filter context in this particular page. And it is directly just giving me the value for that filter context. This is why measures are powerful, because they do the calculations on the fly, right? It's not like I have something that is pre-calculated and stored. In this case, I am just going to drag and drop, and as soon as I drop, the calculation is done. Look how fast this is, right? So that is what this means. So a visual or the query creates initial filter context, right? So the context is already created. So let's say I have a location so and so, I have a month, September, or the fuel type. So based on these filters, right, the measure is created, right? And most importantly, getting back to our food analogy that we've been discussing throughout. So we did learn about the calculated columns, right? Calculated columns, I think in chapter 2, what we did was in the shift reading table, we navigated all the way to the table view. Okay, go to the shift reading table. And here, if I go all the way towards the right side, right, this sales in rupees was something that we calculated. It was pre-calculated by multiplying the total sales in liters into the fuel rate. Yes or no? So this is a calculated column. Guys, I did tell even in the earlier chapters that calculated column always adds weight to the model, making it reduce the performance speed, right? But in our case, measure is not that. You could do the same thing by using some of the sum x functions, some of average x functions. You can also calculate measures by using this, which is a replacement of your calculated columns, all right? So your calculated columns is like a pre-cooked food, right? Because it's already there, it is stored. But wherein your measures is like a freshly cooked food. So every time you order, so then and there it just gets cooked, right? So measures are more preferable. So with that in mind, let us try to understand some of the key properties of the measure, guys. So firstly, it is dynamic. Okay, they change automatically depending on the slices and the filters of your visual, which we just saw. For a particular location and a fuel type, what can actually be the dynamic value that a measure gives? They are stored in table, right? So they're stored in model. They're not stored in the table. So there is no physical place where they are stored, right? They're basically in model base, which is why data modeling is said to be the heart of Power BI, because if your modeling is not in place, your measures will also not be in place. And thirdly is your aggregators. So by default, you have these aggregators that has been applied. Your sum is an aggregator that has been applied in your measure. So let's just get back. Okay, so let me just try to drag the total expenses, all right? So this is the expense, right? So this, I've not applied any sum formula. It's just a normal column. Drag and drop, automatically the summation occurs. So here, let me just remove the filters, okay? So totally it is 31K, which is a total expenses. Now, if I wish to change this aggregation, I can change. How do I do that? Go to the fields. Okay, click on this drop down, and here you see there is sum, there's average, min, max. So you can choose this. So average is 922, and if I were to do minimum, 0, and what's the maximum is 8,120. So again guys, if you wish to see this based on the location, you can always do that, and you will also get the count. That is, there are 34 line items. Count is nothing but the number of rows that is present, right? So that's about the aggregation. So what they're trying to tell here is that the aggregations are also by default, okay? It's not like you have to write all the time. And it is highly dependent on the filter context, right? So you need to actually make sure with respect to what are the filters that are active, right? Because we did see how to edit interactions. If you have missed that, please go back and watch the previous chapters so that you are in line with respect to this particular chapter that we're doing, because this is a full course Power BI thing that we are doing, right? So you need to make sure of what was done earlier. All right, guys. So with that note, let us learn our most powerful measure, that is your calculate function, right? So calculate function. So think of it this way, guys, okay? So let's say you have a scenario, guys, where you're supposed to calculate the sales based on a particular function, which is the place, the location. If you want the location to be the same, let's say I just want to calculate the total sales in Bangalore alone. So how will you write a measure? That is by using a function called as calculate. Calculate is said to be a very, very powerful function. And let us just have a look at this, okay? So just have a look at this PPT. So what you have here is I have a sales that has been calculated just for diesel. So I am using calculate function where I am providing a measure or the expression that I want to calculate, and here I am providing the filter operation, right? So which is why you say calculate changes the current filter context and then evaluate the expression based on the modified contents. In order to understand this better, let's dive into the dashboard. So first, let's try to create a measure, okay? I'll first show you how to use calculate and then we'll understand what exactly this calculate does, okay? So here, clicking on to measure table, okay, let me just go to this calculate. Clicking on to the measure table, new measure. So that's the way how you create a new measure, right? And here I'm going to, let's say I just want to visualize the sales in Bangalore, okay? So what do? I'll be using this calculate function. Calculate function basically takes these parameters, guys. First is the expression. So in our case, you can do two things. My sales information is present in the shift reading table, isn't it? So you can simply do a sum operation on the shift reading table and mention I want to add all the sales in rupees rows that is present in the shift reading table, okay? So this is a column name and this is a table name. This is the operation that I wish to perform. So either you can do this or you can reuse the measure that we've already created. So in our previous example, we had created a measure called as total sales in rupees. Let me just show that to you, right? So if I click on this, do you see there is a measure called as total sales in rupees? So I might as well reuse that. And how do I do that? Use calculate function, open bracket, okay? Within square bracket, I can use this. So do you see this? Yes. So there is total sales in rupees already there. Comma, I am going to have to mention the filter parameters that I'm going to use. So here I want the location to be Bangalore. Now tell me, from where do I fetch this location? Is it from the shift table? No, it is from the dimension table, which is the location dimension table that we've created. So the whole purpose of creating a dimension table is the same, right? So you don't have to go back every time to the other tables. You have to go to the dimension table for any kind of filter context, okay? Don't forget that. So here I'm going to the location dimension table and clicking on city, and I am mentioning is equal to city Bangalore. Make sure the spelling is correct, and this is also case sensitive, guys, so you need to be mindful and check your caps lock. So this is a simple thing. So for indentation, you can always make it look neatly aligned so that you know what's happening here. So this is a function that I want and this is a filter context that I have applied, okay, and click on enter. So a measure called as sales BLR is created. Now let's just see how it works with respect to these filter. So just place a card here. Yes, and drag and drop this guy here. So it says the sales for Bangalore contributes to 4 million, right? And what is the overall sale? The overall sale in rupees is, so out of this amount, Bangalore is actually doing very less, probably because it's just started. So now kindly observe this. If I check on Chennai, my total sales in rupees is changing. That is this measure where I have not used calculate function. But the one where I have used the calculate function, which is sales BLR, is not changing. This is why we tell that calculate function modifies the initial filter context, right? You have to use these terms when it comes to interviews, because only then they will understand that you have good knowledge in this field, right? So the terminologies are very important. So here, what you have in place is that if I'm going to check Bangalore, it's not going to change because it's anyway showing for Bangalore. But wherein your total sales, I have not applied any filter context. It's a plain sum function, right? And for Chennai, it's going to change. For Hyderabad, it is, right? So the overall thing here is not changing. But just see what happens the moment I change the fuel type, guys. See, diesel. Do you see here? So it is basically showing me the sales in Bangalore for the fuel type diesel. And oil, it is showing me petrol, right? It is changing. Why? Because I have not applied any kind of filter when it came to the fuel type. I have only applied filter when it came to the location. So have a look at this formula, guys. Right? So the sales BLR has only one filter. Now let us say I want another expression, another filter criteria. You can. So you can go on adding the filter criteria based on your requirement. That's not a problem. So just separate it with comma. Okay. Shift enter, go to the next line and mention the type of fuel. Again, for the type of fuel, you have to refer to the fuel info table. Click on the fuel type and is equal to, within double quotes, you will be mentioning the fuel type, which is diesel. Right? Correct? So now see what happens, and here let me change the name of the measure so that they are relevant to what operation we are performing. Okay? So yes. Okay, it says it's already been used. So let me just make a small change. Okay, so now I have modified this measure. Now see what happens. Okay, just observe at this measure, guys. It is 2.29 million. Irrespective of what filter context I am going to choose here, only my filter towards the card towards my left side changes because I have not applied anything. But the card towards my right side does not change because I am using calculate function, and calculate function has modified the initial filter context and it has overridden the filter context wherein the location is Bangalore and the fuel type is diesel. Okay, so getting back to our definition, now it is easier for you guys to understand. Calculate function changes the current filter context and then evaluates the expression on the modified context. So here we have modified the context for the location as well as the fuel type. Got it? So these are some of the filters that you can use, guys. You can also use a lot of modifiers, like you have all accept, all selected, you have all, which will ignore all the context. You have remove filters, keep filters, but you know, these things are more advanced, and if you are willing to learn more with respect to calculate modifiers based on the same example, we are more than happy to do a session on that. Please drop a comment below so that we can start working towards it. Yes. So let me just explain this scenario, guys, to you. This is the first scenario that we're going to discuss. So you have the latest fuel rate, correct? And here they are asking you to find the latest fuel rate based on a given location for different types of fuels. So here is how you're going to break down this problem statement. Firstly, you need to create three measures, right? One is for the latest fuel rate for diesel. Secondly, for the latest fuel rate for petrol. Third measure is for the latest fuel rate for oil, right? So you have to first create 3 measures because that is what they asked. Now for a given location, so this means that it will be more feasible if you have an external slicer here, okay, where you have Bangalore as one particular option, Hyderabad, and the other option, that is Chennai. So here you have to make sure that the latest fuel rate only respects the location filter. It should not respect any other filter, guys. Like you can have date, you can have other things like fuel type. It should not respect any of that. It's only going to respect the location filter. So we have to write a particular scenario which brings us to this thing wherein the fuel rate is going to get reused. Why is it going to get reused? Because if you calculate the latest date, right? So in order to understand this scenario, we have to calculate the latest date, right? And this latest date is going to get reused. Firstly, you have to write an expression in order to calculate this latest date, post which you are basically using this latest date in order to fetch the fuel price. So tell me one thing, are you going to write the expression over and over again? No, right? So there is where your variables comes into picture. So that brings us to a question as to what are variables? So variables are nothing but they are a temporary placeholder which is there to store a value. So what am I talking about? Just have a look at this measure, guys. Okay, I have created a measure called as total profit. So how do you get total profit? It is by subtracting the total sales minus total cost. Here I'm basically storing the total sales and the total cost in something called as a variable, right? So variables are ideally used to store some value. Yes. And what is the syntax that they are following? I have the keyword, that is variable. Followed by that, I have to provide the name for the variable. In my case, it is total sales. And I have to provide the expression for total sales. Correct? And also, guys, every time you create a variable, you need to have a return expression. Okay? Why? Because you need to return or have a variable used in a return expression. So in this case, I have basically subtracted these two variables, that is total sales minus total cost, which is nothing but profit, right? So this is a very simple thing. You can also redo it the other way, okay? How? You can also create another variable here called as result, guys. Okay, and this result, you can also store it as profit underscore result or anything else. And this result can also be total sales minus total cost, right? And you can simply return the profit underscore result variable in itself. Reason being, here in this particular measure, you're just using it like 2 times. You may have different other scenarios where you're basically using this multiple times. So when you use it multiple times, each and every time writing a lengthy formula doesn't make sense, right? So which is why you use main property of your variable is your reusability. You can use it multiple times, right? And also readability. So come on, let's agree. Reading profit underscore result is much more better than reading a big formula, right? So that's the readability. And also your performance. Your performance meaning that your variable, once you create it, is being calculated only once, guys. It's not calculated every time you use it. So once you write an expression, it's calculated and it is stored there. And multiple other times you reuse it, that is when you will be using this variable again and again. And it's also easy for debugging. It's easy for debugging. It's easy for debugging because you'll see it in some time. How I'm going to show you. You can actually test by using a variable, right? In order to make sure, especially in scenarios where you'll be writing very lengthy measures, you can actually test the variable and see what is the output that you're getting, right? So that is a reason why you will be using it. So let us dive into and try to solve this latest fuel rate example so that you understand the importance. So let me dive into this Power BI and create a new function, right? So here I have actually created a folder. in quite a bit, I'll show you how to create folders and organize your measures, okay? So right now what I'm going to do here is, I'm going to right click and create a new measure. Okay, so firstly, let me show you why variables are important. So let me just fetch the latest date first. That is our first assignment, right? So let us break down this scenario into multiple things so that it's easier for you to understand. So let me first fetch the latest date. So in order to fetch the latest date, I'll be using calculate function. And in calculate, I'll be using max, okay, max of the date that is present in my fuel rate table. Okay, so where is my fuel rate table? Okay, let me just type in fuel rate date. Okay, so this particular thing I'm going to write, and remember I told you we have to have an external slicer, right? So here I told you in this example, when we broke it down, we need to have this guy. So which means I don't want any other filters to get affected, right? I don't want the card to get affected by any other filter. I just want the card to only respect this filter, that is external slicer. So here you will be using a modifier called as all except. Okay, so in the filter, okay, while I'm writing the filter expression, I will be using a modifier called as all except, so that it ignores all the other external filters except my location. Got it? And here I'm going to write the table name of the particular table that I want my measure to respect, that is your location dimension table. Okay, and the syntax is which column name in the location dimension table I wanted to respect the city, right? So this is basically going to fetch me the maximum date, right? So I'm just going to enter. All right, so now let's just see what this result looks like. So I'll just create a card. The reason I'm breaking up this is so that you guys understand, even while testing and writing big measures, it's always better to break up the problem. So you see here the latest date is 24th. Again, it should only respect my location. So for Bangalore, you see it's changing. For Chennai, it's again changing, and for Hyderabad, it's changing. If you want to verify once, you can always go to the data set, right? So this, you just do Control Shift down, you will go to the last. So 24th is the last date for Chennai. Yes. So 24th 8, that's right. And for Hyderabad, it's 28. Yeah. It's showing the right result. So now I have fetched the latest date, right? Now what I'm going to do is, I'm going to put this latest date inside a variable. Reason being, I want to reuse it in fetching the fuel price. So simple guys, I'm just making it a variable. So I'm going to create a new measure. Okay, so first, instead of jumping into variables, let's just see what exactly my latest date looks like. So I'm going to create a measure called as latest date. So in order to fetch that, I'll be using the calculated function, and I'll be deriving the maximum date that is present in my fuel rate table, right? So in my fuel rate table, there is a date column. I'll be first fetching the maximum date, close parenthesis, comma, and then I have to apply a filter, guys. Remember last time I told you that you need an external filter where you have all the locations in place. So this external filter only should be respected by my measure, nothing else, irrespective of what other filters like I have. So let's say I have, date, it should not, because we do have a date, right? So here you see, we do have like 3 measures in our main report, right? So we do have date here, we do have fuel type and location. So my measure is only supposed to respect the location, right? So let me just write a measure for that. How I'm going to write is, I'm going to use this function called as all except. So all except is basically a modifier which will ignore all the other external filters except the one that I'm mentioning within all except. So in our case, I want our measure to ignore all the other context except for that of our location dimension table. So choose the location dimension table and provide the column for which you want to respect, that is your location dimension city, right? So here I'm just going to close this all except. Okay, so this is a very simple measure, right? So once I click on enter, just see what happens. Okay, Let us just create a card. So the latest date I'm going to pull in. So by default, it's taking 24th. Now, if I just change the location to Chennai, it's changing to 28th, right? Hyderabad, okay, and Bangalore, right? It's basically changing. Bangalore is what? 19 and Chennai is 24th. So let us quickly just have a look at it. So the latest date of Chennai is 24th. The similar thing is applicable even for Bangalore as well, right? So see, the latest date is for Bangalore 19th. Right? So this is on our Excel sheet. Just for verification, you can get back to your source data and see if your measure is actually working fine. In our case, it is working fine. So here what I wish to do here is go to the latest date. I'm going to put this entire thing inside a variable. Reason being, we are going to reuse this, right? And every variable is supposed to have a return expression. That is what I just told you, right? So now let me write the name of the measure. Name of the measure is the latest fuel underscore rate for, let's first calculate for diesel, okay? As I told you, we'll be writing 3 measures. So firstly, let us just write a measure for latest fuel rate for diesel, then we'll move to petrol and the other one. So now we have the variable. Remember, I told you every variable should have a return expression. So I am returning. What am I supposed to return? I am supposed to calculate the fuel rate, right? So use the calculate function and retrieve the maximum fuel rate. So here for fuel rate, again, I am supposed to go to the fuel rate table and go all the way to rate in rupees, right? And here I am going to apply another filter. So the filter is going to be 2 things. One thing, the date is supposed to be the latest date. That is the variable that we just created here. And the second one is the fuel information, which is supposed to be diesel. So let me start writing those 2 filters. Okay, you guys are understanding, right? If you have any confusion, please feel free to pause, have a look at the measure and also go back and play the video once, okay? So I'm going to write 2 filters. So firstly, in our fuel table, I'm going to make sure, I'm going to have to close this max, yeah? And now I'm writing the filter expression. So that is your fuel info table. Make sure the fuel type is equal to double quotes diesel, post which I have another one where the calendar table ka date, right? So here is where your calendar table has come into picture because that's a dimension table, which is equal to, I am going to write the variable that we just created, which is the latest date. And you see, variables are represented by X. Okay. And close this. Got it? So very simple measure, guys. So first, variable latest and then latest date, after which you're going to return what? Return the fuel rate for these 2. Okay, let's see if our measure works fine. So there you go. It says for Chennai, the fuel rate is 90.85, right? And this is for diesel alone, right? So again, these measures are right. If you want, you can just verify for yourself. And for Hyderabad, and it is completely respecting my location filter. So even if I'm going to add a slicer here and put on the date, it should not, respect that, right? Do you see here? It's not, because I have hard coded the calculate as overridden our filter context, right? So similar way, by using this same quickly, I'm going to reuse this measure. So I'm just going to do a Control A and Control C, and I'm going to reuse this measure for 2 other fuel types, that is your petrol and oil, right? So petrol, right? Only 2 changes. Rename the measure and also make sure you change the fuel type in the fuel dimension table. Everything else remains the same, right? So that's about this. Again, I'm going to do the same thing for oil, guys. So new measure, paste it, and I'm going to just rename this, okay? If you want, you can type so that you get good practice on how to write measures. Okay, so now I have the latest fuel rate for all the 3 fuel types. So let us go ahead and create a multi-row card now, right? So I'm going to have to create a card that looks like this, right? So going back to our visual, guys, in our main report, if you actually have a look at it, I have written like individual cards, right? So instead of individual cards, I feel it's occupying like too much of space. So why don't we put a multi-row card and make sure we just put in all the measures that we have created inside that, right? Let's try to do that. So let me just quickly delete this. Okay. Yeah, and let us just create a new page. Let me go to the multi-row card. Multi-row card is here, guys, right beside your regular card. Okay, so here I'm first going to have the latest fuels, right? Latest fuel rate. Just drag and drop the fuel one by one, the fields one by one. Yeah, and then let us also paste some of the measures that we created in the last chapter, right? Like the total sales and all of that. And if you want the expense related information, you can also put that here, right? So I have overall 6. I think this looks good. So now if I resize it, right, it becomes vertical instead of horizontal. So what we'll do is let's just change this naming convention, guys. So what I will do is I'll add a title to it. How do I add a title? Go to the general and click on the title. And let me name this title as latest fuel rates. You'll understand why I'm doing this, okay? I'm just trying to save some space. So latest fuel rates, and just change this font at which it looks, okay? Now go back to this particular page so that you can rename this. Instead of fuel rate, no, you can simply just type the fuel name, that is diesel, okay? One second. Yes, diesel. And instead of latest fuel rate, I'm just, double clicking on this field and making sure that I rename it so that my visual looks a little good. Okay, just double click and you can name it whatever you want. You can also have it like MS, HSD, which is the ideal naming convention. And for total purchase, I'm just going to have something called as total space purchase, and in bracket I'm going to have liters. And for total sales, again I'm going to have it as total sales in bracket liters. Okay, and we also have something called as in rupees, right? So click on the measure, go back. Yes. So sum of the amount is nothing but expenses, okay? So you can also have it as total expenses. Okay, I think now our card looks good. So let us just copy this and try to paste it in our visual. Go to the main report. You may have to do some kind of operation so that it fits in place. So yeah, I think it looks good. Yeah. All right. I'm just going to refit this a little bit. Okay, so that I can expand this. Yeah. A little bit of resizing. All right. So now we have actually learned how to create measure using variables. Let's dive into our next scenario and see how to optimize when you have to write a very big measure, okay? So let's see what the next scenario is all about. So before we move on to understanding the second scenario, I just want to revisit our Power BI pipeline and see where exactly we stand. So there is an analogy that we actually applied earlier with respect to the food example, right? So I gave this project as hosting a party where you're basically inviting your guest, where you have to prepare something, right? So the first step we did was data loading, where we purchased all the groceries and we basically brought them, we loaded them into the Power BI. Secondly, we did transformation. So in transformation, it's an example wherein you peel the vegetables, you cut them and make them ready so that they are easier to cook, right? And thirdly, we discussed about data modeling. So here you will be basically making sure that one vegetable is basically, it goes good with the other particular dish, not just a vegetable, a dish. So one dish complements another dish. So what are the ingredients that you have to have in common? And we saw a lot of other things, and we built data modeling where we learned star schema, and then we learned about snowflake schema. Then we built a wonderful dashboard in our last chapter where we actually cook the dish, right? So right now, before publishing, we're just one step away from publishing, where we are actually learning about DAX, right? So with respect to the DAX is what we are doing right now, right? So DAX, think of it this way, guys. So let's say you have nachos, right? Which is one of the dish. And for nachos, what difference does it make if you serve a tomato ketchup, or how will your guest actually respond if you serve a home cooked salsa dip, right? So what we are doing right now is basically a home cooked salsa dip where you're building everything from scratch and making it look more good compared to that of your tomato ketchup. So there is where we are standing right now. We are just one step away from serving, making sure that all the ingredients are in place. And most importantly, your variables is like the ingredients that you use to make these extra dishes, right? So let's say you have a ginger paste that is ready, which is common for everything, right? So that is your variables. You can't always, prepare everything from scratch each and every time you basically use the ingredient. So think of it like a masala, right? So there is where we are standing right now. So with that note, let's just move to the next scenario that we have to do today, which is to find the month with the highest sales. Guys, the scenario looks very simple, right? Just find the month with the highest sales, but it is not easier. The DAX is going to be a little lengthy one. The reason being that, it may look smaller, but our particular data set also has a lot of tables, right? So you need to find a way how to write this, okay? So think of it this way. So given that you're already familiar with Excel spreadsheet, how do you think that you will come up with the problem? So you'll come up with a solution by using this, okay? What you will actually do is, let's say you will build a pivot table, right? Where you will be converting these daily sales. So here you basically have daily sales, right? So these daily sales, you have to convert it in your pivot by, visualizing it with respect to the yearly, and then you'll go to the monthly. So you'll create a report like this. It's a very simple task, right? And you will also be getting the actual sales year monthly. And you will simply sort the larger one in the descending order and you'll get the higher sales. Yes or no? So the same concept you will be using to this particular example as well. Okay. Now let's dive into our Power BI dashboard and try to write a measure where you will be building a particular measure that looks like this. So let me just take you to the fuel bunk dashboard report, and I want to have a highest, I want to show you how a highest sale month looks like. Okay, so I want to have a string here which says the highest sale month is, followed by the month, followed by the year of the month and the value of that particular sales. Okay, so let's dive in. So here is what we are going to do, guys. So you're going to create a variable, okay, which will have a virtual table kind of a thing. Using the summarize method, what we are going to do is, we are going to bring in the month name that we had written in our calendar table, followed by the month and the year. Followed by that, you're going to have the monthly sales. Okay, so these are the things that you're going to bring in here. Alright, so that is the first variable. Secondly, in that particular table, you're going to use a top n function and you're supposed to get the first highest record because you're going to arrange it in the descending order. So that is the second variable. So this is the first one, this is the second variable. And the third variable is a result where you're just going to put everything into a place in a beautiful card where you're just mentioning the highest month is so and so with the highest sales. Got it? This is a funda. So let's try to replicate this. Okay. So how am I going to do this? Calculate a new measure. Okay, gonna take some time. And the new measure is going to be highest. The new measure is going to be highest sales month. Okay, and firstly I'm going to create a variable called as a monthly sales table. Okay, so this is a virtual table that I'm going to create, and to this table I'm going to use a summarize function which is going to summarize my shift reading table, guys. Okay, such that I'm going to have what are the things that I need in the shift reading tables. I'm going to have the calendar table ka month name and the calendar table month year. Okay, so that is one thing. Additionally, I also need another column, right? So for that I'm going to use a method called as add columns. So if I open the add column method, the first argument is a table. So the table is here, which is a summarize, right? And the second one is the column name that I want. So here, let me just name the column as monthly sales. Okay, and what is the expression of that column? The expression of the column is nothing but the total sales, right? So I already have the measure. So I'm not simply going to have some of shift readings. I'm just directly going to use that measure, right? So that measure is basically my total sales in rupees. All right. So this ends our add columns. So this is a variable. So in case if you want to check that if this particular column is working fine, what we'll do here is that we'll just copy paste and see how it looks when you put it in the table, right? So I'm just going to copy this entire thing. And how do you think we are going to create a table? Go to the table view. Okay, and then go to the home, go to the new table. So this is one advantage of variable, guys. You can see the debugging becomes easier. So this is a monthly table, right? So once I click on enter, you see this is the way I want to visualize. So I have the month name, I have the month year and the monthly sales. So my measure is going to work fine. So quickly I'm going to have to delete this because it may have some references in the measure that we are creating, right? And let me just jump to our highest sale month, right? And try to continue building this, right? See, right now it is throwing some error because I don't have the return method in place and I still have the method to be completed. Now next, let us try to create a variable which will fetch this highest month, okay? Highest month is equal to, so here I'm going to use a top n function. As I told you, I'm going to use a top n function where the top n value is the first value, okay? And I'm going to order by this table, which is a monthly sales table, right? So the table name is going to be monthly sales table, which we just created, right? It's the same thing, comma, order by what expression, guys? The expression is this column name that we created, which is the monthly sales. Make sure you're selecting the right parameters, okay? And lastly, I'm going to say how do I want it to be ordered? Obviously bigger to smaller, right? So it is going to be descending order, okay? So now we are going to use all this information in the return function and we are going to return. So while returning, right, I'm going to create, let me create another variable called as result, okay, which is going to store all the information. So what can the result be? Let the result consist of concatenate function. We are going to use concatenate x because as I told you earlier, I want my measure to look like this, where I say the highest sale month is followed by so and so. So to the concatenate x, guys, first I'm supposed to pass an argument which is the highest month, right? I'm going to pass that variable first. So this is a highest month variable from which I'm going to fetch the information. And the expression is going to be simple within double quotes. First, I'm supposed to write highest sales month is semicolon and close it. So anything where you want a string, right, it has to be opened and closed in double inverted commas. After that, I'm going to concatenate by using the ampersand symbol, okay? So ampersand, I'm going to fetch the calendar year ka month year function, right? So how do I do that? Call the calendar table and I need the month and the year. See, I cannot just have the month, guys. I need even the year also, because January means which year of January, right? So that's the reason. Post which I'm going to again concatenate this. Okay, I'm going to add in a rupee before I put in the value of the sales. So how am I going to do that? Control Shift, I think the number 4 basically has the rupee sign. You can actually add a space. Okay, post which you can add another concatenation sign, and here you can format the way your monthly sales look like. We have used the format method earlier. So here you're going to format which argument? Monthly sales. So this is a column name, guys, that we just created here, and I'm going to put a comma, and the way I want it to look at is I want it in 1000 format. Okay, so I'm going to do this. All right. Yeah, looks good. So I'm going to close the format function. I'm going to close the highest method. So just to summarize, you see this is the concatenate x function, which is taking the variable. After that, it is putting this whole thing into place, and I'm closing the concatenate function. Post which you have to return. What am I going to return? I'm going to return the result. Okay, so this is supposed to work. So let's just enter. Okay, works fine, didn't throw any error. Let's just try to copy this in a particular card here and see if this works fine. So let me just place it in a card. Okay, I'm just going to drag it here. There you go, looks good. Yes, this is exactly how I want it to look like. Only one correction is that you see this particular June is MMM format, right? So I want it to be in MMM format. Like I want, if it's September, let's say I want, SEPT. So where exactly will you go change? You have to go to the calendar table, guys. So these kind of things also you should know where to change. You see a month here. I'm just going to make this addition and make it MMM. Double M. Okay, so there you go, it's updated. Do you see here? June. So again, let's just make this a little good. Let me remove the category label because the whole concatenate speaks for itself. Let us just try to make some changes to the call out. Let me just make it calibre, and let me just increase the font to this. I think I need to decrease the font a little more. Okay, so let's just try to put this in our main report. Now I have to really work on fitting this guy in. So let me just reduce the spacing, guys. So just quickly see this spacing kind of a thing. Just see where you can fit in. Yeah, looks too big. Let's just try to reduce the font a little more so that it looks good. Let me just make it 20. Yes, okay, looks good. If you want, you can just give some good background color, or you can choose to have some kind of a border so that this particular function alone stands out, right? So no matter what my external slices are, right? So one second, yeah. So there you go. You basically have the function in place. All right. So this is a highest sale month. So next, let's move on to some of the time intelligent function, guys. So what is the first time intelligent functions that we are going to learn? So if I just go to this time analysis, you see I can see something like MTD, QTD, YTD. So don't get overwhelmed by these too many things, right? I'm going to simplify it and break it down for you so that it's easier for you to understand. So first thing, let's move on to month to date, quarter to date, and year to date. Okay. Okay, so for that, just have a look at this particular function, guys, on the dashboard. So what do you have here? I have the date, I have the total sales, and I have this function called as MTD. So before actually learning what an MTD does, let us try to understand, okay, how it generally works. So your MTD is basically month to date, which means starting from January up to January 31st, it is going to give me the cumulative records on a monthly basis. Okay, this means that from February onwards, it's going to start a new sales record for as of February 1st. But for January 31st, it is going to have the cumulative record starting from the 1st of Jan. Got it? So that is what is your month to date. So if you actually go back to this and see, you will understand that I have the date, okay, in the table. And generally these functions are well used, in a tabular or a matrix, okay. So that is what is preferred. So you have the table here, you have the total sales. Have a look at the first row. It is the same, that is 33,000. The second row is 1,16,000 guys, which is the sum of 33k plus 83k. And the third row, if you see, it is 1,82,000, which is again the sum of all these three. Got it? So this goes on until 31st. So we are actually starting from September here. So let me just go to the 30th of September. So 30 lakhs is basically the total sales for the month of September. Okay, and if you actually go to the October, the sales is again starting newly, right? So it has a cumulative record. So where do you think this kind of record actually helps? If you go to the 31st of October, you see it is touched 1 crore 39. So this will basically allow you to see how your business is doing by the time it's approaching the end of the month. So what your sales guys are basically worried about is they may have certain target guys. So you can actually see, so as of 15th, how far I am from the target, right? Because I will be having the cumulative record starting from the 1st to 15th, right? So let us try to replicate this MTD, and you have a wonderful function that helps you to replicate this. That is your total MTD function, guys. So you don't have to worry about any calculation. So you have this total MTD function for which you will simply be supplying the total sales, which is a measure that we have already created, and the calendar date ka date function, because again these are all time intelligent functions. So which is why creation of calendar table is so important, because without calendar table you can't think of actually having these kind of time intelligent functions which gives accurate results, right? So let us try to replicate this function in the dashboard, right? So let me go to this particular part 2. Okay, so here if you see, I would like to create a separate folder. See, I already have 2 folder guys. One is basic, another one is advanced, right? So let's say I want to put all the time intelligent function in one particular folder so that it's neat. Okay, and how do I do that? So firstly, let's create a measure first. Okay, for the time intelligent function, I'm going to go ahead and create a new measure in the measure table itself. Okay, and let's call it as just plain MTD. Okay, MTD is equal to, so you have this function called as total MTD. So I'm going to click on that, and the first argument is an expression. The expression is nothing but your total sales in rupees, and the second one is the date. So I'm going to have to choose a calendar table ka date. Okay, and just close it. Very simple function. Now let me try it. It's like too clumsy down here, right? So let me put all the time intelligent function in a folder like this. See, in basic I have certain set of function, in advanced I have certain set of functions in place, right? So what I'll do is I'll just try to put this guy also there. Okay, so how do I do that? Go to your data model view. Okay, and in the model view, expand the properties pane. While you expand, if you actually scroll down, do you see this something called as display folder? So make sure that you have clicked on the particular measure that you want to fall into this display folder, and name the display folder. So I'm going to name this display folder as time functions. Okay, and just click on enter. So now what you have is, you see, inside this time function you have MTD. On a similar way, you can also sort out all of this. So let's say I'm trying to push all of this into the basic folder guys, or the advanced folder. You just have to click here. Okay, so just click on the function that you want, just drag and drop it into the advanced folder. Click on the function, drag and drop it. Click on the function, drag and drop it. Click and drag and drop. So now my measure table looks neat. So if you actually expand it, Okay, let me just collapse it. It has 3 folders. Okay, it has advanced folder in which I have certain advanced measures that we just wrote. Basic, it has very basic measures, and time intelligence, it has measure like MTD. We are going to add on QTD and YTD also. So here, if you see, in order to perform this operation, please remember that you have to be in the data model view, and if you just expand your property pane, you will actually see the display folder where it belongs to. Okay, so with that note, let's try to write another 2 function, that is the total, QTD and YTD. Okay guys, so every time you have to create a time intelligent function, you can directly click on that folder, click on write and create a new measure. So now I'm just going to simply copy paste that because it is going to be the same thing except for a small change. So I'm going to change the name as QTD and the total function is going to be total QTD function. Okay. Got it. And next I'm going to do the same thing for the YTD as well. So go here, right click, create a new measure. Okay, and paste it and make it as YTD. All right, and change this to the total YTD. Okay, enter. Yes, this looks good. So now if you have to just summarize, you can just create a new page. So right now, as I've dropped this to the main report, you can actually consider deleting this page, or you can just consider creating a new page. Okay, and I can rename this page as time analysis. Okay, and I can create a table here. Okay, in order to visualize the MTD, YTD, QTD, what I can actually do is I can drag the date, okay, which will give this. Again guys, I can just remove all this information pertaining to the year and everything, or I can do one thing, I can just retain date instead of date hierarchy. That will give me a neat date. Post which what I can do is I can just drag the measures that we just created, MTD, yes, QTD, and YTD. Okay, so if you have to actually verify this particular values, right, you can go ahead and do that. It's going to be correct. How to do that is you can just go to the basic measure and your total sales in rupees also you can place it here guys. So if you see that, just put the date upwards above. Yeah. Okay, so you see here the total sales is what, 33, and MTD has a correct one. QTD, if you actually go all the way here down, as of this the value is 4 crore 93, right? So you can actually scroll up and actually see that the QTD is continuing even for this quarter. So here you see for the new quarter it actually has changed, that is starting from July the quarter value has already changed, right? So the QTD is also working fine, and so is the YTD. So you can traverse all the way up and check from the time of January, right? Yeah. You see here the value is actually getting reflected, or it is getting refreshed on the first of every year and on the beginning of every quarter and also in the beginning of every month. So that's about your MTD, QTD and YTD, which we are going to have it towards your left. Guys, post this, it also is very important for you to understand where exactly you stand now with respect to your month to date. So which means, let's say I want to understand what is the month to date sales that has happened with respect to the current month that I am in. So for this, I'll be using this function called as current month. Generally, current MTD, that is your total MTD function, is the one that we are going to use. So generally, your current MTD as well as your previous MTD, which is for the previous month, how you were doing, versus the current month, how you're doing. So these kind of things is better, represented if you have them in terms of cards, okay, instead of tables. So just have a look at this dashboard, how I have presented them as, right? You see here, just this particular thing, have a look at this, okay? So Let me just copy this visual so that it's easier to understand, right? Yeah. So do you see here? So this is the current MTD, which means as of this month, I have done 1 crore. But as of current QTD is the current quarter that I'm standing. This is what is my performance. And this can actually be used when you have to do analysis, okay? So what kind of analysis? When you're comparing mainly. Okay, let me just try to quickly paste it and show it to you. So if you have it like this, right? You can see how well you're doing in this month versus how you had done in the previous month. So this will again help you in increasing the performance. Okay, so see, current month I am just at 1 crore, but previous month I think I was doing good. And you can also see the date if you have like 10 days left or 9 days left. And make a note, guys, this will basically, current month will take the latest month whatever is there in your data set. Okay, it doesn't mean that it will take the today's value, okay, whatever is the latest value, because my data set has like value I think up to, let's say, August or something, so it is taking the latest value. So the same thing even with the respect to the current QTD and the previous QTD. So we are actually observing that the previous values were kind of good, okay, and we have a lot to improve, right? So let's try to understand how we are going to do this. Again, guys, the formula is pretty straightforward. See, in the current, you will be using the total MTD function. Along with that, you will be using this dates MTD, okay, because it is with respect to the current date, right? So we will be using this. That is the only change with respect to current MTD and with respect to the MTD function. So let's dive in, okay, and try to replicate this in our dashboard. Okay, so how do I do that? In the time intelligence, create a new measure. Okay, and call this measure current MTD. Please don't get confused with these measures, okay? It's pretty straightforward. You just have to understand the logic. The total MTD function is in place for the current MTD, for which you will be supplying the total sales, okay, in rupees. Followed by that, you will be using this dates MTD function additionally, which will actually fetch the current date. That is the only change. Closing the bracket, right? So I'm quickly going to copy this and replicate for current QTD and current YTD as well, okay? So this is, I just have to change this as QTD and have to change this particular function also has QTD, okay? And the same thing goes for current YTD as well. The reason that we are doing this is because, you may have to calculate the growth also, right? So you may have to know how your current month is doing with respect to your previous month in order to understand the growth that is happening, right? Also, guys, there's one more thing that I missed. This dates MTD should also be written as dates YTD, okay? So everything should be in place when you do. Let me just make that change to the QTD also, to write it as dates QTD. So this is in order to make sure that your values are in place. So the similar thing, let us do it for the previous also, because in order to get the growth, you need the current and the previous to be divided, right? So in order to get the previous MTD, right, you will be using calculate function. And you will be using this function called as previous month, in which you will be doing a collaboration with dates MTD, okay? You can just have these syntax written in one place, okay? I know it's very difficult to actually remember these, but the whole point of doing this is that something like this actually exists, and you can always do your research and have all these measures probably saved in one place, right? You can have the measures saved it in a PPT or a Word document so that you will know what are the kind of measures that you have used in this function. That is why segregating it in format of your folders also becomes very helpful, guys, okay? So let us try to write the previous function, okay? The previous MTD and YTD function. So create a new measure, okay, go write previous MTD, Okay, and here write calculate function. What am I trying to calculate? I'm trying to calculate, here the expression is total sales, right? So total sales in rupees I'm trying to calculate, and in the filter I will be writing this previous month. Okay, so for quarter you have to use quarter, and for year you have to use year. Okay, so previous month, and I'll be using the dates mtd function. Okay, along with that I will be using the date from which table you have to give, close the parenthesis properly and close the parenthesis for calculate function, right? So this is my previous mtd. On the same basis, let's quickly do for previous qtd and ytd. Just trying to change, right? And the previous month becomes previous quarter now. Okay, and dates mtd becomes dates qtd. Okay guys, so let us just try to put all of these measures in a multi-row card. Okay, so let's click on multi-row card. Okay, I'm going to create two cards here. One is for the current information and the other for the previous information. So I'm going to quickly drop all the current mtd and ytd in this. Okay, so I'm going to quickly drop the current mtd, current qtd and the current ytd in this, and I'm going to drop the previous mtd, previous qtd and ytd. So you see, a representation like this actually makes it a little easier for you to analyze, right? You will know where you're standing in the current month compared to that of your previous month. Now let's try to dive in and understand the month-on-month growth, the whole point of why we have created so many measures, right? So the formula, let's dive into the formula to understand this, guys. So the formula goes like this. Okay, first of all, you need to divide the current with the previous, for which you will be using this divide function, right? But this will basically give you a ratio, and this ratio needs to be converted further, right? So you'll be subtracted with -1, which will actually give you the decimal units again. Okay, which you need to again convert it to percentage. Like too much of math, don't get confused. Just remember that you have to divide the whole thing, that is current and your previous, and subtracted by 1. With respect to any kind of growth, this is a percentage that we will be universally using, right? So how do you do that? There are also multiple ways of doing it, but this is like easiest way. So let me go to the time function and quickly calculate this new measure that is used in order to calculate the MOM growth. Okay, which is equal to, I'll be dividing, what are the two things that we just created in the numerator? I'll have the current MTD, and in the denominator, I'll have the previous MTD. Okay, and close it -1. Okay, so if I just bring in my card right here, what happens is that the MOM growth will look like this. Okay, first of all, it's negative. It is very easily evident because your current is obviously not doing that great compared to previous. So you're running at negative. Now 0.7, you can actually go to the column tools here and convert that. Okay, in the measure tools, you can convert that to a percentage, right? So now you see, it is -71.67%, which is actually less, right? So this kind of a visual will actually give you how good you can actually improve your sales. So guys, the concept is the same for your quarter on quarter and also for a year on year growth. Okay, so I'm just going to quickly just replicate that. Okay, so there you go, guys. You have the month on month growth, the year on year growth percentage, and the quarter on quarter. So year on year is actually positive, which means that you have still a long way to go to complete this year. But however, you know, month on month, you may consider working on it. right? So with that note, that brings to an end of this particular time intelligence series here. Okay. Additionally, I would also like to show two other visuals in this particular thing that we have done here. Okay, just have a look at this decomposition tree. Okay, so this is a kind of a tree which basically helps you in analyzing how your sales is doing with respect to the fuel type, in what year, what quarter I have been doing this well. Okay, so you can actually try to replicate this. I mean, it's pretty easy. All you have to do is that you have to use this particular symbol here, that is your decomposition tree. Okay, so what I'm going to do here is just create another page. So let me just click on this particular visual here, that is decomposition tree. Okay, and here first thing you have to choose what you want to analyze. So in my case, I'm always going to analyze the sales, right? So I'm just going to bring in this total sales in rupees here, and then I can try to explain here by what means I want to analyze the total sales. So let's say I want to explain it based on the okay, fuel type. So where is the fuel type? The fuel type is there in your fuel info dimension table. I can just put it here. Got it? So now if you actually click on the plus symbol, right, and you click on the high value, you'll be able to see the type of fuel that is yielding me more sales, which is obviously diesel and then petrol, and the least is oil. Again, if I want to branch this based on the days how my diesel is doing, I can further keep adding here things. Okay, for that I have to go to the calendar table here and just take the date and put it here. Okay, so here you see what just happened. It got it went on the year basis, right? And again guys, here in case of explain by, I can take the fuel type and I can drop it up. Okay, so that the fuel type is first seen, and then you can branch this, okay, where I can see the year followed by the quarter, and again in quarterly how my sale is doing. So this kind of a decomposition tree basically helps you to visualize what day exactly you're doing good and what day you're doing bad. So this is very important. And also there is an important AI feature guys in BI. Okay, so your business intelligence tool, again, you have to know how to use it. So please, be mindful while using this. Always cross verify before you send it to your management, because as it's AI, it can give you a lot of results. So you need to see the relevance here. So let me just try to use this particular visual here, that is key influencer, right? So what I've done here is that I've basically analyzed which location has most number of collection. Right, so here it says Bangalore, and it even gives me the pump related information. So how do I do that? Very simple guys. Okay, use this particular key influences here. Okay, and here in the analyze part, you can choose any one of the numerical value that you want. So here I can just choose cash, and in cash I've already created a measure called as total collection, right? So in total collection, you see it says there is no fields in explain by. So in the explain by, I can actually add, let's say, location. From the location dimension table, I can add the city, and if I want, I can actually add the cash collection ka pump also, pump name, so that I get to know which pump is actually, doing better. So for some reason, let's just do one thing. Let me just take the location from the cash table itself. Okay. Yes. Okay. Why is this happening? Yeah, there you go. So here you do have, so what happened was guys, pump name is something that you don't have, right? So here is where data modeling comes into picture. I'm trying to use a field from cash collection, right? So pump name is something that is local to cash collection. So I cannot choose the location from a different table. So I am keeping all the locations, all the fields with respect to this cash collection table itself. So if you actually observe here, what influences total collection in rupees to decrease or increase, right? So it is basically running the analysis, and it is saying that the average total collection is decreasing in pump 3. You can actually see how it's decreasing, and the location is also mentioned here, that is Chennai. So these kind of analysis you can actually perform by using your key influences, right? So that comes to the end of our DAX and calculations, where I've also additionally taught you how to use two other visuals with respect to the date and time. All right, so please do use this and implement in your visual until we move to the next section, that is publishing the visual. Very interesting part, because right now you have just built all the reports here, you have it in different pages. Just work on it a little bit, try to make it look good, presentable, work on the color coordination, color combos, get comfortable with Power BI interface, and I'll meet you in the next chapter. Thank you. So that's the end of this video. Hope you enjoyed the practical sessions. If you found this video helpful, share and subscribe to our channel. Thank you for watching and see you soon.